Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday, August 28th, the final Sunday in August. Massachusetts Congressman Jake Auchincloss is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. His first term on Capitol Hill marked by a razor-thin Democratic majority. Now, recent wins for President Biden are changing the conversation in D.C. How is this Marine making his voice heard? Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Enterprise political reporter Jen Wu. It's great to have you with us this morning, and we're pleased to have Jake Auchincloss in the chair this morning. Democrat representing the 4th District here in Massachusetts, first taking office back in January of 2021. A member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, a Newton native, a Marine. He holds degrees from Harvard and MIT. It's great to see you, sir, as we head toward Labor Day. Can you believe summer's almost over already?
It's good to be back on.
Great to see you.
So, speaking of transportation, you are on the Transportation Committee, and the MBTA is in serious trouble. They've shut down lines. Others may follow in the months moving forward. But the big question really is federal oversight or federal takeover. Which do you think is better for riders and taxpayers? Now, your colleague Stephen Lynch was our guest last week, and he said he favors takeover. Is he right about that?
Bay Staters deserve reliable, affordable public transit. With the bipartisan infrastructure law, with the American Rescue Plan, we've provided significant funds at the federal level to Massachusetts to get that done. But the MBTA is not meeting the mark right now for my constituents or for Representative Lynch's constituents. Tomorrow, I'm joining Rep. Lynch and Rep. Moulton for a meeting with the MBTA to understand top to bottom what happened here. I'm going to use that information to inform how I think about this issue going forward. But what I'm absolutely committed to is working with state and local leaders, Maura Healey starting next year, and Michelle Wu, who's already in office, to create a public transit system that's worthy of Massachusetts. This state has such work ethic, such talent, such potential, and it's housing and transportation that's going to hold us back. I joined Mayor Wu years ago, back when we were both city councilors, handing out Free the Tea placards at rail stations, and I'm just as committed as she is to a progressive vision of transportation that says it shouldn't cost you more to get from Franklin to Boston than it on a commuter rail than in a car. That's ridiculous.
Now, she wants oversight, not takeover, for obvious reasons. She wants a seat, a front seat at the table. But your colleague says it's time for a takeover. So are you going to hold off on that decision?
I'm holding off because as a local official, I always want to pay deference to mayors and governors, as a former local official, I should say. In general, they are closest to the problem. They can be closest to the solution. I do think there's an appropriate role for federal oversight, either in education or transportation when things are falling apart. But I want to understand and hear the MBTA weigh in on this in our meeting tomorrow.
And how do you think we're what, 8 days or so, 9 days into the shutdown itself? Is it being executed fairly, as best as can be expected? What do you think? What's your judgment so far?
So I have not taken it myself, and I always like to experience it before I opine on it too much. The reports I'm seeing is that the buses have been relatively reliable. As someone who cares a lot about protected cycling lanes and walkability, I continue to want to see better access for people who are cycling or walking in general around Greater Boston. I know Mayor Wu has pointed that out as well.
All right, let's talk about another issue that is front and center. We mentioned not only Transportation Committee, but you're on the National Security Subcommittee. 300 classified documents have been removed from Mar-a-Lago. Aside from what is contained in them, what needs to be done to prevent this from ever happening again?
Sometimes the answer is really simple, and it's don't elect Donald Trump. We can pass all the good laws that we can think of to prevent a chief executive from abusing his power and from mishandling classified information. But if you elect a criminal by definition is going to break laws. And so instead of trying to over-engineer a solution, and there may be important fixes that we have to make, I'm certainly receptive to those, the most important thing we have to do is defeat Donald Trump, prevent him from running again, prevent him from winning.
Perhaps the biggest topic at the kitchen table these days for many of your constituents is the question about the student loans. President Biden agreed to forgive those at the lower end of the income bracket, but he did it through executive order instead of through Congress. Do you think it will actually happen because of what could, was expected to go through the courts, et cetera? And do you think there are going to be major implementation hurdles?
Well, I'll leave the question about statutory authority to the court system, about whether the 2003 HEROES Act, which is the statutory authority that's driving this decision, permits the president to act in this way. What I'll say as a matter of policy is that while I share the president's commitment to lower costs for families throughout the United States, and we've made big strides with our recent bill to empower Medicare to negotiate drug prices, for example, and to lower premiums, I would have taken a different approach here. I would have really prioritized medical debt over student debt in Washington, D.C. For about the same amount of money, we could provide medical debt relief for families across the United States. That'd be more fair and more progressive in the deepest sense of the word, meaning disproportionately helps those who are lowest income, lowest wealth.
They've been talking about the price tag being roughly around $24 billion in general, whether it's medical debt relief or it's student loan relief. Do you think it's good for our economy right now, which is sort of on the precipice?
Do you mean in terms of inflation?
Right.
The impact on inflation on, frankly, either medical debt or student debt relief is I think, minimal. And just to give you a sense of it, the best numbers I've seen are that the impact of student debt relief would be something like 1/40th the impact of the American Rescue Plan in terms of the discretionary buying power of American consumers. So we're not going to see this move the needle a lot on inflation. So that's not a grounds on which I would disagree with this move. I just think there are more impactful ways that we can help the working poor in this country.
Understanding full well what you said at the beginning of the answer, where you would prefer that this had gone at the 10,000 threshold. Is that enough? Should it be more? Should it be less? We're at the 10,000 threshold, what do you think?
I would have liked to have seen us take a more surgical approach. So, for example, make student debt dischargeable as part of bankruptcy proceedings. Look at how we can make college more affordable. A proactive vision for why is it that between my mom's generation and my generation, college has gone up several times over in terms of overall cost. We need more competition amongst higher education universities. We need to provide pathways for people to get career development outside of a 4-year degree. I never saw anybody leave IBEW 103 or plumbers and pipe fitters apprenticeship programs with any debt whatsoever. They're getting good jobs, high salaries, no debt. I think we've got to look expansively at how we provide people the skills they need to thrive in the 21st century.
Next item, as a Marine who fought in Afghanistan, you supported the U.S. withdrawal, but a year later, here we are. The country is in chaos. Women have lost their rights. Half of the country is suffering acute hunger, and perhaps the biggest problem is the Taliban is looking to China for help. Was the right thing done?
Yes.
Yes.
The United States is in a stronger position now than it was 1 year ago. We have freed up resources and bandwidth to focus on existential threats from Russia and China, which the president has handled capably. But we, of course, cannot forget about Afghanistan. Afghanistan is struggling. They're struggling with hunger. They are struggling with economic development. The United States is the largest humanitarian donor in the world to Afghanistan. That must sustain. But we also need a long-term vision for Afghanistan economic development. I think Western mining could do what Western militaries never could, which is put Afghan on a path of self-sufficiency. They have tremendous loads of copper, lithium, rare earth elements, lapis lazuli. Afghan-led mining could be a path for them for both human, social, and economic development.
There is the question, however, that Beijing could be playing a major part. After all, they are suggesting they are going to formally recognize the Taliban. Would this put us far behind in trying to... One of the reasons we left was because that we wanted to be able to concentrate more on China and on Russia. But this doesn't counter that argument, counter that effort?
It's a terrific point. After 20 years and $2 trillion in Afghanistan, the Chinese Communist Party sees an opening for them to take advantage of the groundwork that we laid. And they already have a contract for a copper lode north of Kabul at Mezainak, and they want to corner the market on the clean energy and IT supply chains that Afghanistan offers. The United States cannot permit that. We cannot permit the Chinese Communist Party to try to exploit Afghanistan the way they've exploited African nations, and we cannot allow the Afghan people to be without any support as they try to chart a path forward.
Congressman Jay Gockenklaus is with us this morning. We'll be right back.